Good afternoon. My name is Joni Mabin, and I am a 7th grade mathematics teacher. I am presenting this data overview at the grade level meetings at JDMS. The purpose of this data overview is to analyze the student and teacher demographics over the past 4 years. This includes things such as the total enrollment and attendance, gender, race, socioeconomic status, mobility rate, and educational programs. Furthermore, we will analyze the end-of-year state testing data at JDMS over the past 4 years, and this includes data from the CRCT and Georgia Milestones. As we all know, the CRCT was replaced with the Georgia Milestones, so we will look at 2 years of CRCT data as well as 2 years of Georgia Milestones data. We will identify areas of strengths and weaknesses in data and instruction at JDMS. Do we see any trends in data? Could these trends be linked to various initiatives at JDMS? Finally, we will develop a plan of action to address some of the weaknesses that we identified as being present at JDMS. Some questions that I would like for you to consider as we go through this data are: what strengths and weaknesses do we see when analyzing the end-of-the-year state testing data? Do we see any trends in data across the content areas? Finally, the overarching question that needs to be considered is, how can we use this analysis to make changes and drive instruction at JDMS? We will follow up with this particular question at the end of the presentation. The first piece of data that I would like to present is the total enrollment of students at Jeff Davis Middle School. As you can see from this graph, the total enrollment has steadily declined over the past 4 years. I'm not sure of the reasons behind this decline, but JDMS houses roughly 70 fewer students in the 2015-16 school year than the 2012-13 school year. This decline has made an impact on class sizes over the course of these 4 years. The gender divide is just about equal at JDMS. As you can see, there seems to be a slightly higher population of males than females. However, the difference is almost non-existent. The biggest difference in the male and female population was during the 2015-16 school year, where there was 53% males to 47% females. This equated to 344 males and only 305 females. Still, the gender populations seem to be pretty well balanced each year. In regards to race and ethnicity at JDMS, the population is largely Caucasian. However, over the past 4 years, JDMS has seen a rise in the Hispanic population. Thus, we have also seen a rise in the ELL population. Poverty remains an issue in Hazelhurst, Georgia. We can see this issue reflected when looking at the socioeconomic status of students at Jeff Davis Middle School. In 2012-13, 71% of the student population qualified for free or reduced lunches. This percentage grew to 74% the next school year. In 2014, Jeff Davis Middle School participated in the Community Eligibility Provision Program, which is a program that offers free meals, both breakfast and lunch, to all students in high-needs schools. JDMS qualified for this program. Thus, all students at JDMS have eaten free breakfasts and lunches at no charge for the past 3 school years. Another alarming statistic that we see at JDMS that mirrors this poverty issue is the homeless population. In 2014-15, 10 students at JDMS were homeless. Although this has since fallen to only 5 students, this is one statistic that is an unfortunate and heartbreaking realization facing several of our students. We have seen a tremendous decline in the mobility rate at Jeff Davis Middle School. In 2012-13, the mobility rate was 25%, and this percentage was maintained during the next school year, but steadily declined for the next 2 school years, dropping to only 7% during the 2015 school year. When breaking down the educational programs offered at JDMS, you can see the steady increase in the ELL and special education populations. Previously mentioned, the Hispanic population has risen over the past 4 years, and this has contributed to a higher ELL population. The special education population has grown by almost 3% in the past 4 years. The gifted population, however, is continually declining, starting at 6.8% in the 2012-13 school year and falling to only 3% during the 2015-16 school year. Student attendance has been an issue that the administration at Jeff Davis Middle School takes very seriously. In the past several years, we have offered incentives for high attendance rates, including perfect attendance. These incentives have proven effective as the percentage of students who have missed 5 or fewer days increased from 48% to 56% over the past 4 years. In 2012-13, 93 students at JDMS were absent at least 15 days. This was over 12% of the total population. This number dropped to 66 students in the 2015-16, equaling only 9.5% of the total population. There are a total of 48 teachers at Jeff Davis Middle School, all of which are Caucasian. There are 15 male teachers and 33 female teachers. Both administrators, the principal and assistant principal, are males. The years of experience of teachers ranges from first-year teachers to those with 35 years of experience. When looking at the end-of-the-year state testing data, we must compare oranges to oranges. By this, I mean that we cannot compare the CRCT data to Georgia Milestones data, as the scales are not the same. When looking at the CRCT data for 2 years, we can see that the students at JDMS outperformed the state's average in the area of ELA. We had fewer students to not meet than the state average, and more students exceeding than the state average. However, when we look at data from the past 2 years on the Georgia Milestones, we see a different story. JDMS had a much higher percentage of students scoring on the first 2 levels and a much lower percentage of students scoring in the proficient and distinguished levels than the state average. This shows that when given a more rigorous test that involves more short answer and essay questions, as well as application and higher order thinking questions, our students are not measuring up. This could also be contributed to lower reading levels, throwing a red flag, and should remain an area of concern for teachers. When looking at the CRCT scores in the area of mathematics, we can see that most of the students scored in the meets category. We had fewer students in the does not meet and exceeds categories than the state average for both years. When comparing the Georgia Milestones, we can see that the beginning category did decline over the 2 years, showing that more students moved up a level. However, we are still below the state average in proficient and distinguished categories. Again, this more rigorous assessment indicates that the instruction in the classroom should also become more rigorous so that students are prepared for the Georgia Milestones assessment. The science CRCT mirrored that of the mathematics CRCT. Most of the students fell into the meets category, while we had fewer students in the does not meet and the exceeds categories than the state average. JDMS's science Georgia Milestones data was very consistent with the state's average. At most, the scores were different by 4 percentage points. This shows that the students at Jeff Davis Middle School are very consistent with other middle school students in the area of science. Although we do not have a very high percentage of students in the distinguished category, we are still very close to the state average. When administering the social studies CRCT, JDMS students shined. We had a lower percentage of students scoring in the does not meet and meets category than the state's average due to a much higher percentage of students landing in the exceeds category. When transitioning to the Georgia Milestones, again, students at JDMS still remained competitive to the state average. Although fewer students fell in the distinguished category than the state average, the other categories were comparable. Upon analysis of the data at Jeff Davis Middle School, two major strengths were present. First, the attendance rates are improving. This decline is essential in ensuring our students are receiving adequate instruction time and their learning is maximized. If students are not at school, they are not receiving the instruction they so desperately need. I feel as though the attendance incentives have aided in this increase. Second, all content areas saw a decline in the beginning category during the second year of the Georgia Milestones. During the first year of Georgia Milestones implementation, many teachers were nervous of what to expect. I feel as though the first year's data was used to identify areas of concern and drive instruction during the second year. Although the percentages in the beginning category are not ideal, improvements are being made to push students to higher levels. The biggest word that we continually hear at JDMS is progress. Are students making progress? Are academic gains present? Although slower than some would like, this decline in the beginning category of the Georgia Milestones should be considered progress. Several weaknesses were present when analyzing the data at Jeff Davis Middle School. First, low socioeconomic status continues to be on the rise. Although we cannot help the situations students face at home, we can ensure that their time in school is filled with a safe learning environment that provides the maximum number of learning opportunities for our students. Second, when transitioned to the Georgia Milestones, the ELA scores are consistently below the state's average on all levels. Yes, other content areas showed weaknesses in scores. However, the ELA scores were most alarming. ELA had the lowest percentage of distinguished students on the Georgia Milestones, half as much as any other content. ELA had a higher percentage of students to exceed on the CRCT than the state's average. I feel as though this major difference in scores when comparing CRCT versus Milestones should send red flags to teachers. When the end of the year assessment became more rigorous, students did not excel as much. For this reason, we must develop a plan of action. Where do we go from here? How do we address low reading and writing skills? The biggest area of concern, in my opinion, is ELA scores. If students are struggling to read, all contents will be affected. To address this concern, the main focus of Jacket Time, which is our school's study skills class, should be reading and writing skills. Since its implementation, Jacket Time has made a positive impact on increasing student Lexile scores. If implemented effectively with all teachers on board, this trend should continue with reading and writing skills improving. I would like to leave you with these final thoughts. I would really like for you to read these questions carefully and put in some thought to answer each. First, how can we ensure that all students feel successful in their reading and writing skills? The reality is many students at JDMS cannot read and never feel successful as they are so far behind. We never want students to feel inadequate or unsuccessful. So how do we allow these students to feel successful while improving their reading and writing abilities? Next, what research-based strategies can we incorporate into our Jacket Time so that all students' reading and writing skills improve? When used effectively, Jacket Time has the potential to help all of our students improve in their reading and writing abilities. However, we must provide our teachers, especially those who are not ELA teachers, with adequate strategies to incorporate with their students during this time. Finally, how can we incorporate more reading and writing skills into all contents? As mentioned, if reading and writing skills are lacking, it creates a ripple effect for all other contents. For this reason, we must provide students with the opportunity to read and provide written responses in all content areas. Again, I would love to have your feedback to these questions. Thank you so much for your willingness to come together to push our students toward academic success.